That was a very intimidating introduction. In fact, I have to admit, that's going to be a hard act to follow. Starting with microphone. Now, I am not a doctor, by the way. I hate to correct you, but that's one title I haven't attained. Another title I haven't attained is microphone engineer. What I have done, however, that is unusual for me is that I have sheaf of papers with me today. And the reason I do is because just yesterday the Institute for Museum and Library Science released a study of the impact of the internet and computers on public libraries. I haven't digested it yet, so this sheaf of papers represents some digestion in process, which I think you're all experiencing right now anyway. But before I proceed, I did want to thank the Graduate School of Library and Information Science here for inviting me to speak this evening. This annual event has become something of an annual addiction of mine. I think this is my third or fourth one, and I have to admit that it's a real joy to come back here every year and see the profession swelling and growing with the perspectives and the talents of a new generation. And I find that very exciting, especially since it's getting more and more complicated. And it's getting more and more challenging as time goes on. And we as a profession, we need people who can carry our past into the future. And that's going to be a big job. And sometime in that future, I'm going to exit. And it's nice to know that the profession is going to continue, as I said, swelling and growing as it has been way into the future. Well, Dr. Gilden asked me to take up a particular question this evening, which is now that we have the internet, why do we need libraries? And I take my primary focus there to be public libraries, although I think what I'm going to say is going to relate to almost all the libraries that we might encounter, let's just say for the next 5 years, because even that's an event horizon that none of us can predict yet. But that question I've been hearing for almost 2 decades now, since I think the first time I heard it was when there were a group of folks in Rhode Island from a variety of regions that were attempting to create a network that later became RINET, that interconnects schools, libraries to each other, to the internet, and to other resources. And one of my colleagues on that committee was a faculty member at Brown. So he was a little ahead of the rest of us in terms of the hardware and the bandwidth that was available to him. And I remember him describing, more detail than some of us wanted, sitting at his desk in front of the computer with his daughter on his lap doing her homework online with resources that he could find at the other end of this computer thing. This was early 90s. He wasn't even using the web. I mean, that's talent, among other things. But it was easy to answer his question, which was, if I can do this with my daughter and get all her homework done, why do we need libraries anymore? Because libraries were where all the resources still were. Move ahead another 5 years from that, and we're in 1966, 1967. Even with my cheat sheet here, I can't even remember exactly when this datum is from, but about a quarter of the public libraries in the country were online in the mid-90s. Now, nearly everybody has the same facility available to them at their local library, and for that matter, many times in their home, that my colleague back then had because of his special relationship with Brown University. Is my answer still pertinent? Is the library where all the resources are? And is that why we still need libraries even though there's an internet? Well, more recently than when we were forming RINET, I've started asking that question more than I've started trying to answer it. And I get a variety of answers in a variety of places. Everything, frankly, from we don't, do we? Which to some people may turn out to be a legitimate answer. But my favorite answer comes from a college-age friend of my daughter who answered almost instantly without even thinking, because the library's there, and the internet really isn't. And in a sense, at least in the Gertrude Stein sense, The library is there, and the internet is more like Oakland, California, where there is no there. Let me follow up on that for just a minute, because it's been become very popular in the library literature to talk about how the public library, at least, is the third place. And this is a concept that comes from a fellow named Rhode, who wrote a book for planners and community developers called Great Good Places. And he describes this third place. He invented this concept of a place that is not work, and it's not home, but it's a place where communities can form, and sub-communities of communities can form. And my cheat sheet has a quote from him. The third place it has engaging activities and uses for all. It has comfort and an image that signals that someone took the time and energy to design amenities that welcome, intrigue, or help. I think that describes the library. But that's not all the library is, and that certainly is in distinction to the internet. But in a sense, it's not fair to make that comparison, because bricks and mortar are always going to be bricks and mortar, and online is always going to be online. And so we really should be talking more functionally, I suppose, than just in terms of what things are made of. Most recently, I've come to the conclusion, though, that this question that's on the front of your programs, that was on all the advertisements, and that I began by asking, is the wrong question. We shouldn't be asking, now that there's the internet, why do we need libraries? Because internet and libraries really are not at all even the same kind of thing. And I hope I can convince you of that this evening. That when you ask, now that there's the internet, why do we need libraries? It's kind of like Noam Chomsky's famous question about, do you want to go to Chicago or do you want to go by bus? We've got a difference here with the distinction. The library and the internet do cross paths everywhere. And, but they aren't the same kind of thing. I think the confusion leads to our core question of the evening, comes from the idea that what libraries do is provide people with information. And what the internet does is provide people with information. And then it sounds like they're the same thing. You can be going to Chicago, and the bus can be going to Chicago, and it can sound like the trip is the same, but it really isn't.